Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
Friends of NRA is your chance to support our Second Amendment rights and preserve America's hunting traditions. Join Friends of NRA at one of our 600 exciting events nationwide. From games to auctions and exclusive firearms, Friends of NRA events are your chance to support a cause you care about while having a great time with patriots in your community. Whether you're a seasoned shooter, an avid hunter or outdoorsman, or passionate about freedom, there's a place for you within Friends of NRA. Visit friendsofnra.org to find an event near you. Stand up for freedom with the Friends of NRA.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Western Hunting Hub podcast. In this episode, we have Lindsay from Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery. New kind of topic and very interesting. All of you Colorado listeners, listen up. This one is centered around you, but also very applicable, and all of the information is going to fit for all of you outside of Colorado. So give this a listen. It is definitely worth your time. Thanks. Hey, Lindsay, thanks so much for jumping on the Western Hunting Hub podcast today. Appreciate you doing a quick last minute episode. It's September 1st today. Today was opening elk in South Dakota here, as well as many other Western states. So welcome. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Clint. Happy to be here. And yeah, I know Colorado. I'm in Colorado, and their season opens tomorrow, but we're already starting to get calls rolling in, so tis the season.
Yeah. So pre-calls, those are just like I plan on missing, or just setting is that just like just in case I really want to have somebody in my back pocket? What's that all about?
Yeah, so I mean, I like to use the analogy of we're kind of like a first aid kit. We're something, a good tool and resource to have in your pack when you go out hunting. You never plan on using it, but if you do end up needing it, it's good to have. And so we've a couple states have already had some species open. So we've actually had some live calls and some tracks that we've done already this season. To your point, some of the Western states just opened up, and we've already had several calls this morning come in. So far we've had a couple antelope, we've had mountain lion, which is a first for us.
Oh yeah.
We'll get bears here in for the fall bear. We can't do bear in Colorado, but we can in a lot of the surrounding states. And we've got a couple elk calls that we got this morning that some of our trackers are going on.
Yeah.
So we get pretty busy.
We're jumping into it a little quick. Just my curiosity was getting me there, but give me some background, the listeners, some background just about you, your family business, your business, kind of where in Colorado you are is important as for your business. So give me a little background.
So yeah, I'll back up on Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery. So we're a nonprofit organization, and so the founder, Scott Gillespie, he's the president. I'm the vice president of the group. So he's been tracking since 2017. That's when it became legal in Colorado. And so I got into it about 3 years ago. But basically the background is we're a network of trackers that we have the concentration of trackers in Wyoming and Colorado, but we're expanding. We have some trackers now that are up in Idaho and Wyoming and Utah. So we're starting to expand out to some more of the Western states, especially as Washington just got legalized. I think it was last year. Oregon's still not legal. Nevada and Arizona still aren't legal, but hoping to expand to those states once the legislature gets pushed through there. But Essentially, we are a nonprofit because we cannot charge for our services. We're not a guiding service. So we can't charge people for recovery for any of the animals. So it's all on our own dime. Much like, if you have a pack of horses and mules, you can't charge people to haul out meat unless you have an outfitter's license. It's something similar to that. It falls underneath that type of legislature. So we're just out there and we'd like to do it for fun. It's kind of like a hobby for a lot of us. And so if you're back out east, where there's a lot of private land, a lot of guys do the blood tracking out there. They can charge their services, but technically we can't, which is why we're the nonprofit. So people can make donations to our organization if they feel, so compelled to do so. But none of our trackers get compensated monetarily.
So I didn't.
Lindsay, how'd you get?
Go ahead, Mark.
I was gonna say, how did you get started with it with your dogs? Like, what sparked your interest originally?
Yeah, I've always been a hunter my entire life. I'm originally from Minnesota, and my husband and I moved out to Colorado about 10 years ago. And my husband and I were out mule deer hunting probably about 3-4 years ago, and came across a big elk that had been taken down by a mountain lion. It was pretty close to a residential area, so I just put out a notice on Facebook because we've had a lot of problems with kids getting attacked or pets and that kind of stuff. About 5-6 years ago, a boy was attacked by a mountain lion not too far from where I live. So I just put it out there. I'm like, hey guys, big mountain lion took down a big bull elk. Watch your pets, watch your kids, all that stuff. Had a couple guys reach out to me and say, hey, I got a cat tag. You want to show me the coordinates of where this elk was taken? And this one guy, I asked him, I said, so you got like lion dogs or something? And he goes, no, I don't have those types of dogs. So what kind of dogs do you have? He said, well, I do blood tracking with my dogs. And I was like, blood tracking, what's that? I'm like, I've never heard of that before. I'm like, how have I been hunting my entire life? I've never heard of this. And so he kind of told me a little bit about what he did. And so I said, hey, I got a 1-year-old black lab. I got her for mostly upland bird hunting and doing some shed hunting and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, be kind of a useful thing to have, if like we have a friend that made a bad shot, or we made a bad shot, some just has something, that a dog that could be trained that way. And so he's like, yeah, I'll help you train your dog. And so he kind of became my mentor. And he was the previous vice president of this group. And so that's kind of how I got into it. Is just more so like, hey, I'll just do it a leisurely thing. And knowing myself, though, I should have known that within a year I would be the vice president of this group, because that's just, I can't do anything half-assed. So here I am. We're on our 3rd tracking season with our dog, and she loves it more than I do.
Where, and I guess I didn't understand the organization of all of that. Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery, right? Did I say that? Yep. Okay. So you're the umbrella organization, and you have members or so or just contacts that are spread throughout? Is that
members? Yeah. So members, they pay a membership fee. And we have to vet them just to make sure that they are good withstanding of the state. They aren't like felons, they haven't broken any laws, that they are good upstanding people, that they will follow the law, because we're very, very strict on not accepting money, because it's a felony. Guiding without a license, you can get in big trouble if you're out there taking a bunch of money from people. And so we take it pretty seriously, and so we want to make sure that people understand our laws. And so that's why we have to vet all the people that are part of our group. And just to make sure too that they're actually serious about it, and they have a dog that is actually, they're working with it, and we feel comfortable putting them out on a live track to help a hunter.
Oh, absolutely. I was doing a bunch of research just on the packing side of things, since I'm going solo this year, and it's Northwest Colorado is pretty dry and arid, and it's a time thing. It doesn't matter how strong your back and your legs are. It's a time thing. You can only do what is physically, humanly possible in a certain amount of time. And so I was digging deep for packers. Like, I ran into that same issue that, okay, I got these names, and then I started digging, like, okay, I got to take and dig these names into cross-reference with who's permitted with the BLM office, who has a license, and just diving into it and say, yeah, packing out meat is right in there with the outfitting. And a lot of guys I don't think realize that, especially with the tracking dogs as well. And so many folks around here, I'm in Western South Dakota, where we have I've seen a couple of folks around at various sporting organization get-togethers that are handing out cards, and it's that same, we're doing it for free for that reason, which makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. And what I'm getting at with that larger organization, I haven't seen that before, and I think that's perfect for that sort of thing, because it's such a geographical region important thing. Like, it has to
Yeah.
be, like, if I'm in Rifle, Colorado, and where I used to live, if I'm there, I can't call you. Where are you at in Colorado?
I'm in Bailey, Colorado, which is about an hour southwest of Denver in the mountains.
Yeah, yeah. So that's I went to a wrestling tournament there. I took my wrestlers there, and
Bailey?
yeah, and
Oh, all right. Small world. Yeah.
yeah. Um, and so I can't call you. I mean, I could, but I mean,
Yeah, no,
that's
so
still a
that's
long
the
way.
that's the nice thing though, is we because we're a network of trackers, so you contact one of us if we can't take it. We have a WhatsApp chat group that we have posted like just for tracks. So if somebody contacts me and says, hey, I got this guy contacted me, he shot a bull elk this morning at 7 a.m. It's kind of quartering to, we think it might be a single lung, that kind of thing. I'll put that out. Here's his contact information. If you guys can take it, here's his phone number. And then somebody in the group, well, if they're available, if it's in Rifle, Colorado, they can say, yep, I'll take it. And so that way you reach one of us, you'll reach all of us, and your information will get out there.
That's
So
cool.
that's what's kind of nice, because we actually have a tracker that's up kind of near the Black Hills area.
Do you?
So
Yeah.
yeah, so we're kind of spread out all over the place. So but I mean, the West is a really big area, and we have about 23 members in our group right now. And that's spread across, all the Western states. So and nothing in the mountains is ever a straight shot either. I mean, you could be, 20 miles as the crow flies, but it could take me an hour to get there, so it just depends. And so if I can't take it, that's why we just kind of put it out there on the network to see if somebody else can get it. We actually have a couple other folks that come from out east. So we have a guy that comes from Missouri. This is gonna be his second year doing it, because he does whitetails out there. And he said September is kind of a slow month for him. And plus he just wants to do something different. So he comes out and he just kind of bounces around out on the western slopes of Colorado. And I think he found 12 elk last year.
Oh my.
He just kind of bounces around for the month of September. So it's awesome. We kind of have some additional resources that are coming in. We're growing. I mean, we're always welcoming more people, because still we always get more calls than we can possibly ever take. And that's hard.
And what were those states that you're spreading across again?
So we have trackers right now. Mostly they're concentrated in Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. We have a couple now that we've expanded to in Montana and Idaho. And that we have somebody too that's looking to come into our group that's in Washington. But you have 23 people across, 4 or 5 Western states. And I would say a lot of our trackers are kind of more on the front range here, so if you're out in Grand Junction, you could be 4 or 5 hours away from us. And so it's tough. I mean, I have taken elk calls that were a 5-hour one-way drive, but it's got to spend the night. And a lot of us have families or jobs or other things like that we have to contend with. And so we try to get to as many as we possibly can, but sometimes there's just geographically and resource limited limitations that we have.
Yeah. And how, and I know this is getting back to the money thing. And Mark, I'll hand this over to you here in a sec to ask away, but it comes back to this money thing as well of like you can't exchange money, but like if you were to come to Rifle and I knew you traveled away ways, could I say like let me get the hotel for I know you got to stay, let me get a hotel for you, like is that something you guys can accept or something like hey let me go fill up your vehicle, something like that, is that a thing we can do, or is that like it's
Technically, it's still compensation.
yeah
And so, we're not as one Forest Service officer put it is like you guys aren't even supposed to be taking a cup of coffee
wow
from people. So they're pretty strict on it. And so, we're not trying to ruffle any feathers. We're just doing it because we love it. We're not in it to get rich, I'll tell you that.
yeah because there's
But it's
zero
like,
money into it.
but that's the thing is like, just do people pay you to go elk hunting? I mean, maybe they do. Most people they don't. It's a hobby, right? They just do it because they love it. Same thing with us. Like we don't get paid to do the hobby that we love. We just love working with our dogs. And we love helping hunters because a lot of us, including myself, have been there. We've lost animals and we know what it feels like. And that being a part of the hunt in that way is probably one of the most special parts, being able to unite the hunter to their animal that they thought they would never ever see.
Right.
And I've had grown men that I just met 2 hours previously to this crying in front of me because they were just so happy and that we found the animal. And so it's a very emotional experience for a lot of people, and us included as trackers. And we take it personally. We really do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Mark?
Oh boy. All right. So one thing that I want to change gears a little bit on is I want to know about the dogs. Like, so in Minnesota, I have a friend of mine that there was a shot, it went wrong, ended up shooting the deer in the gut, and we ended up calling out a dog tracker. So I got a little bit of experience seeing it firsthand, and watching that dog was insane. I mean,
Mhm.
knowing the difference between a live deer and an injured deer. Tell me a little bit more about that and like the sense the dogs are picking up and how that works.
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of an anatomy lesson. Deer have this thing called an interdigital gland that's between their hooves. So if you look at a deer hoof and you kind of spread apart the top part of their hoof, you'll see this gland. And that gland is a communication gland. They use it to communicate with each other within like their herd area, within, marking territories and that kind of stuff. But what will happen when a deer gets stressed or they get injured, they will put off a certain pheromone or certain scent from that gland. And the dog can lock in on it. It's like a fingerprint. It's an individual scent gland that the deer can put out the dog and lock on. A lot of times, if the deer is fatally wounded, it's just, I don't know how dogs know it. It's just thousands of years of hunting instincts. They know when a deer is fatally wounded. They'll tell you within, a lot of times you'll show up to a track and the way that your dog is acting, if they're just kind of like going for a leisurely walk in the woods, you're like, yeah, dude, your deer's not wounded. The dog just knows because they know that there's not going to be a reward at the end of the track. So why work hard? Now, if the deer is hit hard, we can usually tell right when we show up because our dog is just like pulling our ass down the mountain. So it's kind of cool that they have that ability to do this. So whitetail deer, mule deer, they're a lot easier to track than elk. Elk do not have the interdigital gland. So that's why elk are some of the toughest animals to track, is because unless they're bleeding or have some sort of individual unique identifying scent that the dog can pick up on, if they get in back with a herd, it's really hard to track that animal because elk smell like elk. And so that's why the elk is a little bit harder to track down than like a deer or whitetail, because if they stop bleeding or they stop, if like a gut hit, if that kind of heals up, or like somebody bumps the deer or the elk and it runs, they could go for a mile or two and that kind of wound heals up and they're no longer emitting any scent. It can make it a lot harder for the dog, definitely.
That's fascinating.
what
With the individual scent thing. Deer hunters know that, and that's a common thing. And putting scrapes out and rubs out, mock scrapes and all that sort of thing to kind of piss off that big buck. And oh, there's someone kind of coming to my territory. So I had no idea with elk. That's really fascinating. You would think physiologically they'd be very similar, very, very similar.
They
But
have scent glands. They're just not in between the hooves.
yeah,
And so it doesn't act the same way as it would for like a whitetail. So it's just different anatomy. For whatever reason, they don't have that gland.
Sure, it's just like that, those does stomping and kind of warding off danger, or letting people know danger. What are you doing in the off season for training your dog, or working it to get it ready for hunting season, for tracking?
Yeah, so off season we do a lot of mock tracks. So I joke around with my husband. I said, if anybody ever broke into our house and looked in our freezers, they probably would think that we're serial killers, because I have freezers full of elk legs, deer legs, hides, blood, like these little bottles full of blood. And so we usually stockpile a lot of that kind of either during the season, or I have some connections with slaughterhouses. So like we'll get like cow's blood, because blood just smells like blood. Doesn't matter what it is. And then we'll save deer legs, because what we do is I have these tracking shoes. So they look like these big metal giant shoes that I have on the bottom of my feet. I should have had them here to show you for demonstration purposes, but essentially you put a deer hoof on the bottom of it. And so every single time when you step into the ground, it's pushing that deer scent from the hoof into the ground, so mimicking a wounded deer on a track. And then a lot of times the guys, especially out east, as their dogs get really, really good, they won't even use blood anymore. They'll use just the hoof scent. And so they'll train their dogs to do that. So we'll lay mock tracks for them, try to make it as realistic as possible. And then we try to run our dogs on it to practice, to keep them in shape and keep us in shape, and kind of keep fine tune a lot of those things where maybe like I need to work on X, Y, and Z with my dog. That's kind of when we take that time to do that work.
That's awesome. So if somebody had their personal dog and they wanted to start getting into this, or, just like you said, just having that backup plan, how do you take those first steps in training your dog if they don't have, somebody to study under like you did?
Yeah. So, I would say a good resource to start out with, this book called, Dogs for, it's Dogs for Finding Wounded Deer, I believe is what it's called, by John Jennany. I'll find the picture for it here real quick. But it's a really good book, because so it's Tracking Dogs for Finding Wounded Deer by John Jennany. He was kind of the forefather of blood tracking. He was kind of the one that laid the groundwork for blood tracking. He started out in New York State. Is kind of working back in like the 70s and 80s to try to get a lot of legislatures pushed through in order to make it legal. He put out that book, and it's a really great introduction onto like how to start your dog, how to interview a hunter, how to read a blood trail, how to, read your dog, all that kind of stuff. He even goes into like the different dog breeds and how each dog breed tracks versus one another. So it's really good. For me, like if you want to start training your dog, is get some blood, get some hide, and get some deer hooves. And if you have a puppy, you can start out with like a liver drag. So you just take like a piece of liver and attach it to the end of a rope, and you can just drag it maybe 100 yards or so and have the puppy go out there and sniff that bloodline at the very end of it, you feed them dinner or breakfast or whatever it is. So they start associating that with a reward, some kind of treat at the end. And then you start making it longer. You start putting 90-degree bends in there. And then once they kind of get a little bit older, you can start introducing blood. So taking away the liver, doing the blood. You can lay it pretty thick, and then you can start kind of backing off on the amount of blood that you use. And then you can start introducing the deer hooves along with the blood, and then eventually fade out the blood. And then another way too is to kind of help challenge your dog is the amount of time that you let the track age. So you can start out just by letting it sit maybe 2-3 hours, and then you run your dog on it. If your dog's doing really good, then you can start maybe aging it to 10 to 12 to 15 hours, and then overnight, and then 24 hours. So you can kind of start stretching those periods out. And I'm simplifying this, but there's a lot of videos out there too that you can look at. And like I said, that John Gennady book is a really good resource too, to kind of help get people started. And if you have any questions too, people can always reach out to us, and our group is extremely willing to help people, get their dogs trained and get them resources and everything. And we actually hold blood tracking seminars every single year. So we just had one this last May that we held out in Bailey, Colorado here. And so we'll have judges. So United Blood Trackers, which is like the national organization that they do like certification tests for your dog, just to get them certified, so that they're a viable, good tracking dog. And they'll come out and do sermons and seminars, and so we will have that every single year. So we're going to have another one again here in May, so people can come and register for that. So it's another good resource to kind of help bring your dog out there, have people help you with your dog, troubleshoot things, work through things. So I would say those are kind of some of the major resources that people, want to reach out to us. We can help point them in the right direction.
Those dogs
That's
that
awesome.
people are using, how versatile can a dog get in their antler dog, their bird dog, jumping into tracking, their hound dog, or their hounds for lion dog? And I'm sure it depends on how good the dog really is, how well they can switch gears to things, but what are you seeing along those lines?
So, I mean, I would say the more different types of scent work you can do with your dog, and the more often they get opportunities to do scent work, the better. And cross training's great too. I mean, I originally got my dog for an upland bird hunter and shed hunter, and she got into blood tracking too, and she can do it all. You just have to teach them different commands, so they just have to know what they're doing, right? So same thing with like a lab. They can be an upland bird dog, and they can also be a duck dog, or a goose dog. You just gotta, when you're training them, you use different commands. So like with me, when I'm hunting upland birds, I'll say hunt them up, and so she knows, okay, that means we're looking for pheasants. If we are going out shed hunting, I have a specific command that I use. I say find the bone, so she knows, all right, we're going out looking for sheds. If we are doing the blood tracking, I'll just tell her, I'll say find it, or I'll say where's the deer, and she kind of knows, okay, that's what we're going after. We're looking for the blood. And they're pretty smart too. I mean, once they've done it a few times, like they kind of like understand, okay, this is what we're looking for. This is the game that we're playing.
Yeah. You're not holding your gun with an orange vest standing in a
Yeah.
field.
Oh, she knows. As soon as I get my tracking leash out and I get my pack, I mean, she is just like on me. She's like, where are we going? What are we doing? She's all for it.
Yeah. And I suppose I think the lady up here has like beagles or something. I don't know. I'm assuming that it's versatile as far as dog breeds people are using, or is there just ones that are outstanding trackers?
I mean, there's dogs that are like specifically bred just for blood tracking. So you got like your Hanover hounds, you got your bloodhounds, you got your Bavarian mountain hounds. The Bavarians have become very, very popular. But a lot of those are like European breeds that they've used like specifically just for that. So I would say they're more like specialists in that area. We have quite a few people in our group that use dachshunds. Dachshunds are surprisingly amazing trackers. They're low to the ground. They have a tenacious hunting instinct, and they are just fearless. I mean, we have guys that will track bears with his dachshunds, and they're not afraid at all. They won't back down. They're little go-getters. And they're just fun to watch. I have a lab because at the end of the day for me, it's you do blood tracking, a couple months out of the year, and then you have like the dog, the other, 11, 10 months out of the year, you got to actually like the dog that you have.
Yeah.
If you don't like bloodhounds, but you think that they make good tracking dogs, maybe that's not the dog for you, because it's like, well, I don't really care for their howl, I don't really care for this and that. I think pretty much almost any dog, if they show the willingness to work and follow a bloodline, we've had people pick up dogs from the pound that are mutts, that are like a pug beagle mix, and they will track. And so it's just like, you don't necessarily have to have a specific breed, but hunting breeds definitely have more of a knack or tenacity, towards tracking. But yes, we have a lot of people that will use labs, pointers, or the hounds, that kind of stuff, or the dachshunds are kind of more popular ones. We have some German shepherds too that are in the mix, Malinois.
Sure. That makes sense.
Do you you guys have certain laws that you have to follow when you are tracking? Do you guys have like days of time? And like, I know that you can't finish the animal off with a firearm, like if the animal's still alive, but you got to have them leashed. What are some other laws that you guys have?
Yeah, so it varies by state. And so I'll speak specifically just to Colorado because that's the law I'm familiar with. So we have to buy a tracking license from the state of Colorado, from CPW. So we have to buy a tracking license. When we have a call come in and we're going to go do that track, we have to call it into the nearest wildlife office area. Within my geography, I've made pretty good relationships with the local game wardens in the area, so I'll just call them directly and I'll say, hey, I'm taking a track for this species. This is the scenario. Here's my tracking license number. And then I also have to provide the hunter's CID and their name and what unit they're hunting. And so I have to provide all that information before I even go out on the track. In some states, you can track at night. I know Colorado, you cannot unless you have prior permission from a CPW officer ahead of time. You have to have your dog on a leash at all times, so they can't just run around chasing animals. The hunter, if you come upon the animal and it's still alive, you as a tracker, you have to back out. You can't pursue the animal, and the hunter has to then kind of take over from there. And yes, that's happened several times. So you can't use the dog to pursue a wounded animal once you verify it's still alive. A couple other things too is you can only use one dog on a track, so you can't like take like a pack of hounds out there and try to run down the animal. And in some states, not in Colorado, but some states, I think like Wyoming, there's a 72-hour rule. So if you shot it more than 72 hours ago, you can't call a tracker to come in and look for it. Colorado, they don't really have a limit on that. But there are just some kind of nuances depending on the state that you're in. So that's why, like I said, the trackers just, if you're tracking in a certain state, you got to know those laws. And that's why we have to validate a lot of people that are part of our group.
What are some of those rules for hunters that you've already chatted with a few that it's like their first aid kit, they're prepared with what are those, if you could talk with every hunter? And thankfully for you, as well as a lot of the trackers in Colorado, most of our listeners, the biggest density is in Colorado. which is great. So speaking to a lot of Colorado hunters right now, what are those do this, don't do this that you could give them
Yeah, I mean, I would say,
besides shoot great?
yeah, shoot your bow more. No, I mean, here's the thing: is like stuff happens to even the best of hunters. You hunt long enough, something's gonna happen. So no judgment on our end, but I would say if you know that you made a bad hit, because sometimes like that you hit too far back, or you're like, ooh, that didn't look right, or whatever. If you have any hesitation about like where you hit the animal, back out, give us a call. We'll walk you through it. If we can't get a dog out there, we'll at least try to talk and walk you through like, hey, here's a scenario, like here's what we think you should do. Usually like wait times, like you hit an animal, if it's a gut shot, we'll try to usually wait 24 hours to come in and track that animal just to give it time to die because you don't want to bump it. Liver shot is usually like 9 to 12 hours it takes for them to expire. So we'll usually wait a little bit if we think it's a liver shot. So we'll ask you if you found the arrow, we'll ask you like, hey, what can you send us a picture of the arrow? What does it look like? Because that can tell us a lot. Does it dark blood? Does it look like liver blood? Does it look like there's stomach contents on it? Does it sting? Is it a gut shot? Does it have like pink bubbly blood on it? Is it maybe a lung shot? So those are kind of some of the things that we're looking for. Or is there like kind of that tallow, kind of flaky stuff on it? Like, oh, that's probably a high back hit. So there's some things that we try to, information we'll get from you. If you can take pictures of the blood, that helps too, to kind of help us understand kind of what we're looking at. So yeah, first thing is like, if you have any doubts, whatever, call us. We'll try to get a dog out there. If we can't, we'll try to walk you through that. That's step number one. Step number two is if you're starting to follow the blood trail and it peters out, don't start doing grid searches and getting 10 or 15 of your buddies in there. Because what that does is that just spreads the scent from the animal all over the mountainside, and our dog can't line a track anymore. And so it just wastes a lot of time because then we have to try to go around the area to pick up the animal scent again. So if you can help it, don't grid search before you call us. I mean, if you grid searched, we'll still go try to come out there and help you, but it just makes our job a little bit harder. And call us as soon as you know, like, because I have guys that will say, hey, I hit this animal 2-3 days ago. I can't find it. Can you bring your dog out here? The longer you wait, the more the scent line dissipates. So it makes it harder for us to be able to go in there and try to find the animal. So those are kind of some of the main things that we try to look for.
In 1933, Fred Bear created a legacy, pursuing his lifelong passion. Fred's mission was to ensure archery remains accessible to everyone. Here at Bear Archery, we promise to never forget the principles our brands were founded on. From the youngest archer to the oldest, we strive to build bows that give you the best shooting experience. Visit beararchery.com to discover more.
Oh, he mad. You're gonna get 3 likes and 2 shares.
Don't miss a new episode of Duck Camp Dinners. It's coming at you every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on Waypoint TV.
Lindsay,
That
go ahead.
right there, I should have called you.
Oh,
And I spent so much time looking, and then I found him on the hike out 2 days later.
oh, nice.
And if there's a lot of shoulda, coulda, wouldas on that whole deal, because my arrow went in and it was lung, but then it hit something, but also I think it was some tuning stuff with my bow, so the arrow was not flying straight as that hit.
Mhm.
And so it had this giant deflection to the hind quarter. And I was like, I just made an awesome shot. So I gave it my typical time of, that was a great shot, because he took off and perfectly broadside, and had to go make some coffee and chill out for a minute. And then when I snuck up on him, I bumped him. I was like, oh, okay. Didn't know that was going to be a thing.
Mhm.
And then after that was a whole rodeo of searching and searching and searching, and he died on the trail that I came in on, like
Oh God.
a mile and a half away. And I was too busy in the backcountry looking and looking and looking. And had I just said, screw it, I'm going to go pack up and maybe go get some help or something, I would have ran right into it. So
Mhm.
that was super frustrating.
Yeah.
But didn't, and like so many other hunters, didn't even cross my mind. Didn't even cross my mind to call somebody other than a buddy to make
Yeah.
them help. So
Yeah.
that's fascinating. Really, and I told Mark, I said, you know way more about this than I do. Ask all the questions, but I'm cutting him off asking questions out of pure interest, and I have no idea. This is something I have not a clue about, just like you hadn't years ago.
Right.
Completely oblivious to a lot of this stuff. So sorry, Mark, but
Hey, no problems. It gets me just as excited.
uh, yeah, go for it.
One thing that I'm wondering is, so you guys are a nonprofit, so people can donate to your nonprofit. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. So what is that? What is your guys' nonprofit? Like, what's the structure? Do you guys like, is there any money that can go back to you guys for all the time and effort and gas money and hotel?
So we're a 501c3. And so a lot of our money, what it goes towards is we vote on everything. So if we have our structure that we have, so you have the president, the vice president, you have the secretary, you have the treasurer, and then we have members that are part of our group. And so us as a group, we get on about once a month on a call. We talk through any like new business meetings, that kind of stuff. We go over our balance of what we have in the bank, and we talk about how we're going to spend it. Not once has any of our hunters gotten compensated from that money. Usually what that goes towards is we will pay for like booths, like going to like the Western Hunting Expo. We are at the Mile High Hunt Expo in Denver. So we had to pay for those. It pays for our seminar. When we had our seminar out at the Tomahawk Ranch in Bailey this past May, it's not free, and then, we had speakers come in and, the judges. And so we had to pay for all of that stuff. So that's where all that money goes to, is more like education, being able to go to a lot of these hunting expos to be able to get the word out there and get exposure. So more and more hunters are aware of what we're doing. And then we can also try to recruit more trackers to come on board to help out, so that way we can help even more hunters. And then we had a special, I would say, fundraiser donation pool that we just had, that went towards the education for the mountain lion hunting ban that's going to be up for ballot here in Colorado. So we'll help fund a lot of those initiatives. We all vote on that as our board members, and then with our members within the group. And then we specifically will call it out, like on the Facebook page that we had like a GoFundMe site that said like, hey, this is a donation to go towards supporting this cause. So that's usually where a lot of those funds that will go.
Okay. Do you guys have any like ratings within yourself, like recovery score between the dogs?
As far as like success rates?
Yeah. Do you guys like rate your dogs? I know the guy in Minnesota, their chapter, they have like, they do, I don't know, kind of like a friendly competition between them, and who has the best rate, success rate, recovery rate, all that between the dogs. Just curious if you guys did anything like that.
We don't have that. So a lot of that's going to depend on, so I'll throw out some like national statistics here. So national statistics for recovery is about 40%. So about 40% of the animals that we get calls on are recovered. There's a multitude of different reasons for that. I'll get into that in a minute, but we try to screen the calls. So we'll interview the hunter, and a lot of that is to try to figure out where we think they hit the animal, So like for our knowledge, if it's gut, we're gonna wait. If it's, lung or, something like that, we might try to get out there a lot earlier. If it's a shoulder hit, we're gonna try to get on it right away. So there's a lot of different things that we'll try to go and evaluate what we think happened. A lot of us just like, even if we know it's a low success rate, we'll try to get out there and just even give the hunter peace of mind. So, if you're keeping statistics, like, it may deter people from going on those calls, because sometimes like that's a whole like motto for us is like, hey, you don't know until you go. I can't tell you how many tracks I've been on where like the elk was a for sure dead elk, and he was found on his feet walking around a day or two later. So, I guess along the story is like, no, we don't keep those statistics. I would say like us, like personally, we'll kind of just say like, hey, out of the number of tracks that we did, we had so many recoveries, here's our percentage rate. Here's, the one that we didn't recover. Here's what we suspect it was: a high back shot, it's a front shoulder hit, or a frontal shot gone wrong. But there's just, some of those kind of statistics that will kind of keep in our back pocket. But it'd be kind of fun, to do that between the trackers. But man, because we're a nonprofit, like some of us can only get out on a couple tracks a year. We can't go on, like a lot of the guys out east, they can take 3-4 tracks in a day. If you do 2 tracks in a day in the mountains, you're gonna kill yourself.
And your dog.
Yeah, I can see where that's going to be way different. You're on the edge of a cornfield that you hiked in 100 yards to get to.
And you rode your ATV there. A lot of times here it's like you're hiking 2-3 miles, because nobody ever shoots an elk right next to the road. It's always a 2-3 mile hike back in, and it's always up 2,500 foot elevation gain, and it's always back in some nasty ass stuff. And so it's like, I would say, I can probably handle 1 track a day, but we have done 2 tracks in a day, and you're dead at the end of it. You're beat.
That's what I was going to ask, is how deep into the backcountry are you guys going to be able to go? If somebody says that this is at 7 miles from the trailhead, what's the conversation?
That just depends on the tracker. I mean, because we've had the guy I was telling you that comes from out east from Missouri. He's probably the best. They're probably the best tracking team that we have here in the month of September, just because they go on 200 whitetail calls a year. There's no way we could ever do that out here. There's just not enough days and time in the year. But he hiked in, I think the longest was 5.5 miles one way before they even started the track. And so, he was like, hey, I'll take it. But we have some guys that are like, hey, if I can't get within like a mile with my truck, I'm not taking it. So it's just all a matter of preference for the tracking team and what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, there's a huge efficiency thing there, and
oh yeah,
the time to get into a spot like that, or even the know-how, if it's a tricky spot, to know where and how to get into that area, that would be pretty difficult. Besides that, you've mentioned the screening process on the phone. From when that phone call comes in and you work through that screening process, what's the rest of the process look like from after that screening to, hey, we're standing over your animal, or we've called it?
So what'll happen is a tracker will call the hunter. We're going to hold them and contact them, try to get as much information on the animal, say, okay, yep, I'm going to take your track. So what I'll do is I'll ask for them to send me an onX drop point for where I can park my truck, and where they hit the animal and where their last blood was, so I can get an idea of which direction the animal's heading. And I can get an idea of like what I'm getting myself into as far as like elevation gain, hiking, all that kind of stuff. So I will then arrange a time. I'll say, okay, I'll meet you at the trailhead at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, whatever it might be. And so we'll meet them there. We'll hike up together. And then I'll always ask the hunter to walk behind me about 20, 30 yards, just because we'll try to give the dog as much working room as possible. And it's because a lot of times if the hunters get, ahead of us or too far to one side of us, the dog thinks it's a competition and will start working faster or might miss some things. They might get pushed. So we try to eliminate that. And then we also ask them to not have their weapons loaded. Unfortunately, not us, but we have no people within the hunting and tracking community that either the tracker has gotten shot or the dog has gotten shot on accident. So we always ask that our hunters leave their weapons unloaded or on, no gun, no bullet in the chamber. If it's a crossbow, don't have, bolt in there. And so we'll let the dog work. And, usually we'll give it as long as we possibly can. And if our dog is just, we know either like, hey, this animal ain't dead. There's not enough sign there. We've seen things on the trail where we're like, okay, this isn't, looking good, or we hit up against that window, that daylight hour window, right? We'll just call it and we'll say, hey, are you comfortable with that? All right, good. We're going to back out. But if we do happen to find the elk, we walk up on it, and it's dead, then, high five. And, I've helped some hunters, butcher and break down their animal and pack it out before. Just all depends. Just cause just last year I had a guy who was a solo hunter, shot an elk. We found it. Daylight hours were kind of starting to dwindle down. He's like, I'll just hang it from a tree. I'm like, dude, this is bear country. So I'm like, well, I'll just help you pack it out. And so, we packed it out together. It wasn't that far from the truck. So, but yeah, that's kind of the process end to end, but not every tracker. I'm not speaking for all trackers. They might not be so well inclined. They'll be like, they don't want to be carrying 100 pounds of elk meat out. Yeah. There you go. See ya.
No kidding. Like I would have a hard time just walking away from that and see you, buddy. Even though they are going to be ecstatic and happy. Hopefully there's always entitled people that feel like they I don't know, a free service is more than that. But
I've never had anybody make demands. It's just more so like, it was more so like I made the call of, if the guys, usually if they're with a group of people, I'll be like, you guys got it, you can handle it. But in this particular circumstance, this guy was a solo hunter. I'm like, I've been there before, breaking down an elk in the dark by yourself, not fun. There's bears around, you're not going to be able to just hang these quarters from a tree and expect them to be there tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And Mark, you cut out there a little bit. So if you're back with us, interject again. So I don't.
Yeah, no, I'm back with you guys. Sorry about that. Hit a
good
little staticky spot, but no, that I think you covered the base pretty well. One thing I was going to mention is I think the reason that those guys out east are able to do those recovery competitions is, like you said before, with those scent glands with the deer, they have that versus the elk and bear. I mean, you're tracking off blood. It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and it's which makes it kind of fun, in a way. It's a different challenge, which is why we have some of these guys that are affiliated with our organization that will come from out east for the month of September, is because like, hey, they're like, I get bored tracking whitetails. It's the same thing. I want to try something different. I want to challenge my dog. And so they'll come out and they'll do some tracks out here, and they just have a blast doing it. And it's just it's a different challenge. But yeah, like if we get mule deer, we'll get whitetail too. Out on eastern Colorado, we'll get those too. So we do get some of those calls where we can use the interdigital gland.
So
That's awesome.
I realize that most your calls probably come during bow season. But do you have any anecdotal data, just things you've found from where most of that wounding loss is coming from, or mostly bow hunters? Is there still quite a few calls in that rifle season, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be where we didn't have hardly any calls during rifle. Now it's starting to pick up. But yeah, I mean, mostly your calls are going to come from archery and muzzleloader season. Just because the knockdown, like you said, so many things, there's so many things that can go wrong with arrows, deflection. I've seen it all too.
Yeah.
And it can get kind of interesting, to say the least. And so, yeah, I mean, I most of our calls will come during the archery season.
Yeah. Yeah, and had mentioned the ballot initiative, and that's, people don't realize the nerves that we should have for the attack on bow hunters, which a lot of people are like, oh, I don't cat hunt anyway, it's no big deal, but they don't realize that bow hunting may not be too far from that low hanging fruit than we realize. It's right there for those antis to attack that as well. So and that's why I push this podcast so much, and recently it's been shoot your broadheads, shoot your broadheads, shoot your broadheads. So stinking important to shoot those broadheads and be so comfortable with your bow setup, and not be pulling things out of the package on the way to Colorado from a Cabela's. I mean, you better have those things shot and zeroed in and know exactly what your setup's doing. So that drives me nuts a little bit to see some of that. And but still, like I just said, that elk, I had some tuning issues, and I've learned from that, and learned, okay, I know what to do now. It was a part of that bow hunting journey of how to mess with my bow a little bit to get proper flight. And I realized how much variability there can be in field points to broadheads, and fixed versus mechanical, and lots of things with that. It'd be fascinating. I can imagine the data that you guys could extract from little interviews with the hunters of what broadheads, what's your poundage, what's your this and that, just a ton of stuff. And have you heard, just while we're talking about it, have you heard any things like that where you would say some takeaways from that you have picked up over the last few years?
Oh yeah, I mean, we had one year a moose call. This guy had shot this really big moose, and he lost the blood trail, and he couldn't find it. And we started asking some questions, and we're like, well, what are you using for a broadhead? And he was using a whitetail broadhead for a moose. And we're like, you're bringing a knife to a gunfight, this is going to be, pretty hard. And needless to say, we never found the moose. And so, another thing that I picked up on too is the types of shots that hunters are taking nowadays. God bless people like Corey Jacobson and, like those guys, like they're excellent hunters, but they put content out there with all these frontal shots. And you get these guys who are watching a lot of YouTube videos. They've only been hunting 1 or 2 years, and they get an opportunity to get a frontal shot on an elk, and they don't really understand elk anatomy and, where to place that arrow. And that's probably one of our, I would say, our one of the number one calls that we get. Our frontal shots gone wrong. And
that's a great thing to get out there.
Yeah. and so that's why I always put out there, I'm like, hey guys, like I'm not knocking frontal shots. If you have the confidence and you have the know-how, and you know how like the elk anatomy works, you know where to shoot the elk, and you've practiced the shot over and over and over again, and you're doing it, under 20 yards. Yeah. Like it can be a very, very, very effective tool, especially if you're a solo hunter. You might not necessarily get those opportunities, to get a nice broadside shot, but you need to understand if you're going to take those types of shots, what type of target you're looking at. 'Cause, I mean, you're looking at about a 9-inch target, about a little larger than the size of a softball. So you got to know how you're shooting, and if that elk is quartering any which way, there's just so many things that can go wrong.
On the frontal shot, the national average.
Yeah, so the national average on a frontal shot recovery rate is about 10%. So if you don't, we always say in our group, if you made a frontal shot and you're calling us, likelihood that you didn't do it right, because usually if you do it right, it's pretty fatal. They'll drop within under 100 yards of where you shot them. But there's just so much that can go wrong with a frontal shot unless you know exactly what you're doing. Like you said, you've practiced it, you're pretty good. It's just the problem is a lot of times, I've asked guys, and it's a learning curve, and like anybody knows, like I'm not trying to hate on anybody, but we've had some guys like it's like their second year hunting ever, and they'll be like, oh, I saw people taking these frontal shots, so I just figured I'd give it a try. And my response isn't like, that's not the time to start trying new stuff with your bow. Is at that moment, and like I said, it shit happens when you're out hunting. I don't care how good of a hunter you are, and so even if you have a perfect broadside shot, things can still go wrong.
Yep.
So am I saying never take a frontal shot? No, I'm not saying that. Because like I said, a lot of guys can pull it off, and they're very, very good at it and successful with it. But the difference is like they practice it, and they know the anatomy, they know where the thoracic opening is, they know where to place their arrow. And so that's the difference. So yeah, if you look at a diagram of a frontal on an elk, and you got the opening like this, and then below that is the breast, where the breast kind of plate comes together, and it kind of rolls a little bit. So a lot of times if you hit that straight on, your arrow will go in a couple inches and it'll just stop. It's like a steel plate. If you hit to the side, what'll happen is the arrow will deflect, like you were talking about, and it'll usually run along the rib cage, and it'll come out through the other side of the shoulder. So basically go underneath the armpit of the elk. And a lot of guys will call us up and they'll be like, oh my God, there's gallons of blood everywhere. It just looks like, somebody spray painted the woods red, and we followed the blood trail for 100 yards, and now we're on our hands and knees looking for pinpricks of blood, and the elk's not there. And I'm like, yep, that's exactly what happened. As a frontal shot gone wrong. You laced it along the rib cage, because what's going to happen is that wound is all outside of the body cavity. So you're going to have a lot of external blood loss that you're going to be able to see on the ground. But elk, especially during the rut, their clotting factor is 7 times higher than a human. So they clot up really quick. And so on those outer wounds, they'll heal up and you'll lose the blood trail. So a lot of times when guys call us, they're like, yeah, we had so much blood, we're down to pinpricks, it's a frontal shot. That's usually what happened. Now, if you hit too high, you'll get lucky if you hit an artery. Otherwise, you'll hit the esophagus, which is fatal, but not right away. It might take a while for that elk to die, days or sometimes weeks. And so, there's just so much that can go wrong with that. We try to encourage people to, take shots, especially if you're still kind of early on in your elk hunting career. Wait for the opportunity, that elk to turn, broadside as much as possible, or even quartering away. That's going to be a lot higher success rate and percentage rate, and you have a much bigger target to be shooting that than, a little 9-inch hole in the front of an elk.
Yeah, and limit your distance you're doing that from. Like
yes,
10, 15 yards is one thing. 25 yards is a different story for sure.
100%. Yep.
So where are you and the other trackers getting the time to get out and do some hunting? Like I got young kids. If somebody called me I would have a hard time getting out and doing it. Like how are folks being able to do that, to drop things on a dime and go on a Monday morning, a Wednesday morning, it doesn't matter. And then also the time to get out and do some hunting themselves.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a balance. And that's why, it's kind of hard, because a lot of us have 9 to 5 jobs. And so we might not be able to drop everything that we're doing, and we might, say like, hey, me as a tracker, I can't take it. So I got to post it out to the network and see if somebody else can, pick it up. So we have a few people in our group that, are retired or, are self-employed. So they have a little more flexibility. I'm like you, I have a 3 and 5-year-old, both boys. They're very active.
Sick.
And
yeah, very similar.
Yeah.
It's hard to walk away from.
Yeah. And so it's, a lot of it's, I gotta align it with my husband, being like, hey, you okay to, watch the kids, pick up the kids from school, whatever it is. And so, that's what limits, us being able to get out. I can't take every call. I try to. But yeah, we have actually quite a few trackers. I would say the majority of the trackers that we have are female, surprisingly.
Huh.
And many of them aren't even hunters themselves. They just like to work with their dogs, and they like to help hunters. And so, for them, like it doesn't matter about, hunting season for them. But for me, I mean, if I'm out hunting and I'm like, man, today is just not going to be my day, weather's not cooperating, wind, whatever, I'm tired, don't want to do it. I can, I'll say like, hey, that's fine. I'll go take a track, I'm very, very lucky in the fact that, I have national forest very, very close to my house, and, we have neighbors that have access. So I'll just walk through their backyard. So I can sleep in my own bed at night. I can, hunt whenever I want to. I can do an evening hunt. So it's not like I packed up for a week and I go and camp out in the backcountry anymore. So I'm a little bit, it's a little bit easier for me to be able to kind of, step away from hunting for a day to go help out with the track.
Absolutely.
I will say this, anybody that's looking to get into doing the dog tracking and helping out, it is free. But one big benefit that you would have with it is you find probably quite a few little honey holes where you wouldn't have found them otherwise.
So here's the one thing that I will say, at least, for me, we don't share our hunting spot, the spots that we have, because that's kind of, I don't know, a breach of trust, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
If somebody's coming in asking for help and you're going in there and jacking their hunting spots, I think that's kind of poor judgment on my end. But that's just me. And plus, I've had a lot of guys be like, hey, they're really reluctant to give me their Onyx drop points because they're like, well, it's their hunting spot. They've been scouting, they've, put all the really hard work into. And I'm like, dude, I get it. Like, I got thousands of acres of national forest right in my backyard, and I can sleep in my own bed. I'm not trying to get any new elk hunting spots. Like, I can shoot 300-inch elk in my backyard. I'm like, I'm good. I don't need to get other people's hunting spots. So I would say, for the majority of us, like, it's not something that we really do. You aren't going to find us hunting in the same ravine as you next year for elk. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Can you plug the organization? What's the proper terminology for that? Club, organization, group? What? I don't know.
You can call us an organization. Yeah. So we're .org. So it's Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery.org. That's the website. So you can go there if you need to find a tracker. There's actually a find a tracker link on there that gives a map of where our trackers are located. And so if you're going out hunting, you can go out there, you can get onto the map. I will say that not every single tracker that's part of our network is on that map. They just choose not to be on the public map. So if you're like I said before, you reach out to any of us that are on that map, we will get you in touch with somebody if we can't take that call. Even if we're, a few hours away, you can still reach out to us, because we'll try to put you in contact with somebody that is within distance of where you're at.
Well, very good. I'm clicking through it as is. I'm kind of curious to see it. And I see the one lady I had in my phone, because I was like, do I have her number in my phone? I've never called her. She handed me a card once, and I'm going to put that in my phone right now. And yes, he's in there. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wasn't surprised when you had said that was so many are female.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. She's a non-hunter, but her and her dog, they're really good. They're a really good team. They probably have one of the I would say the higher recovery rates within our group. So if you ever need to use her, you're in good hands, Clint. So.
Yeah, good deal. Well, I'll let you get back to your holiday weekend, and we thank so much for jumping on a call on such short notice and chatting and sharing your passion with us. It's a very cool and unique thing, a service that you're a part of. So thanks to you and your members for putting that together, because it's a heartbreaker for people, and you get to see the emotional roller coaster of grown men and women going through those ups and downs. It's a cool thing that you're able to provide, for sure. So we really appreciate that. And I'll just get this thing out in the next day or two so people can have it as a resource that are listening, and give your folks in your organization a call, get it in their back pocket so they can have a phone number at least saved in their phone.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, you only need one number, because then, you can reach out to us, and you'll be able to be put on the network. And, one other way you can get a hold of us too is on Facebook. So we have a Facebook group, Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery. If you post on there needing a track, just kind of a PSA, we don't post it to the public forum anymore. We had issues with people that weren't part of our organization reaching out to the hunters and trying to assist with the track. And so to the point that I stated earlier, we're pretty regimented in fact of like vetting our trackers and making sure they're legitimate and they're working with our dogs and that kind of stuff. So we have kind of a high standard. So if you're on our Facebook page and you post for a track and you don't see it come through, don't be dismayed. Just look for a message app from in your Facebook Messenger from one of the admins, because they'll reach out to you and try to get more information.
Good to know. Yeah, that's actually really good to know that it's so well vetted, because there's a lot there that you guys have at stake, and
absolutely, yeah,
down right away. But you got one bad egg in the group there, and it can mess things up and tarnish your guys' name pretty quick. So that makes
absolutely.
Well, again, thanks so much, and we're gonna call it right there. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Clint. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, Lindsay.
Awesome. Thanks again. And I'm gonna put it out there, and I'll make sure I tag the group in it.
Okay. Awesome.
All right.
Well, good luck this season, guys.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks again. We'll see ya.
Appreciate your time.
All right. Bye.
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 But it ain't my ground. This is God's country.
In Wild Country, rules were not created by man. Don't miss Wild Country, Wednesdays from 7 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Presented by Primos. Speak the language. Waypoint TV, the destination for outdoor entertainment.